Hello, my name is Jenny Schmidt, and this is my case study for school law, case study of internet use violation. The known challenges in this certain instance are I'll just go to the problem statement and kind of work back from there. Roosevelt High School has an environment of insecurity and personal attacks as a result of students using the internet to target staff members. And I can venture to guess that it's not just staff members that perhaps are being targeted by internet use violations. However, in this specific instance, that's the lens through which we're viewing this. So from that problem statement, going to the known challenges, there seems to be some student parent-teacher discord. There's the threatening messages received by the teacher, the students within Roosevelt High School who are implicated, and then a challenge seems to be that school leadership needs to preserve the safety and security of all students and staff members. So, and that hasn't happened, obviously. More info that is needed in terms of internet usage agreement at the school. What are the parameters of that? Secondly, the specific place where that message was sent and from whom it came. If it was sent on school grounds, of course that becomes different than if that message was sent from a private computer at the house. And then thirdly, we need to know what other school officials are available to become involved. Is there a school resource officer? Is there a legal team? Is there technology specialists who can track the origins of that message? So kind of delving more into the specifics of those challenges, there seems to be, in terms of the student, teacher, and parent discord, that seems to have begun with the lack of relationship building gestures by Ms. Walker. And her classroom management and curriculum makes students feel little value to their teachers. And the result of that environment, or of that classroom management environment, is one of hostility and distrust. I think another contributor to this discord could be the parents and students valuing grades more than the relationships or more than the school environment and climate of a learning environment as a whole. I think being reduced to just percentages, A's, B's, and C's, has a detriment. In this case, it's to the detriment of the relationships within the school building. And then third, obviously when Ms. Walker was heavily suggested during the evaluation process to improve her classroom management approaches, that didn't go too far, and it seems that her classroom management has not changed despite Dr. Forbes's suggestions and conversations. The main challenge in this case, of course, though, is the threatening message that was received by Ms. Walker from assumingly a student within the high school. So in terms of the cause of that, I'm just going to speak to number 2 here, that issue of cyberbullying, a topic that we delved into in this class, and a topic that we often think is a threat just between students, but the lack of monitoring at the high school and the lack of proactive gestures to prevent students from engaging in cyberbullying, I think, has been a main contributor to this unfortunate situation. It is still a serious threat to the educational environment, and school leaders should take the threat quite seriously, which I think perhaps the way that students have seemingly engaged in cyberbullying, or the culture in which that's happened, could be due to a lack of oversight in general. So lack of parental and school oversight on the use of student technology. And of course we know, working in schools, that we can't prevent all negative things from being said. We wish we could, but oftentimes those are outside of our control. However, there seems to be a negative culture that has gotten out of hand at the high school. Thirdly, challenge C, the leadership challenge in preserving safety of the staff members, all the while promoting what's best for students. The principal, Dr. Forbes, must increase conversations with staff, in particular Ms. Walker, assuming that she's back at school the following year, and challenge her to build positive interactions in her classroom. And I think that he certainly has his work cut out for him, but there might need to be a reconsideration of the value of grades and how the detriment of that might be like I spoke to on the first slide, the lack of positive relationships in the school environment as a whole. So, and thirdly, Dr. Forbes has his work cut out with him in terms of getting to the bottom of it. He has to respond to the seriousness of the threat, but he can't just presume the guilt of a specific student without doing and heading a thorough investigation. So here we have a timeline I've created for the plan of action. And first up, Dr. Forbes must elicit the immediate help from external forces, but whether that be a school resource officer, a local law enforcement agency, technology specialist, legal counsel, some or all of those different areas must come together to get to the bottom of the nature of the threat, ensure safety of Ms. Walker, as well as ensure fairness of the proceedings in terms of finding who did it. So that would be immediate in the first hours or first day. After that, the days out would be, from there, days out, I would make sure that the completion of a thorough investigation has brought about a conclusion in terms of who the threat was made by and where. And I would also be in constant communication with Ms. Walker and make sure that her needs, both personally and professionally, are being met. Is she ready to come back to school? What kind of mental health services are available in terms of employee resources through, what can we do to make Ms. Walker feel that Roosevelt High School is a place that still values her as a teacher and as a person. Weeks out, I would form an internet usage leadership team to research. That might be within the structure of the existing leadership team, or it might be an additional one, depending on how leadership is distributed at the high school. But they would be in charge of researching and crafting recommendations for further school-wide improvements. From weeks out to months out, that team would establish and present long-term internet safety plan, which is obviously something that needs to happen at the high school. And that presentation would involve many stakeholders, including teachers, students, and parents. And then the long-term plan from here and years in the future would be to work this year, next year, and in the future, just approach it as working more closely with Ms. Walker and other staff members to ensure instructional improvements, communicate expectations and consequences of internet usage violations to all stakeholders. So establish a more instructional leadership in terms of valuing relationship buildings in the classroom and amongst staff members. And then secondly, establishing a more serious approach to combating cyberbullying and trying to get a hold of how and why we can prevent further internet usage violations and unsecure use of technology. So the solution then becomes asking what is best for students and schools in the long term. So I think that in this case, the solution comes about through A, increasing oversight, B, increasing awareness of the issue, and C, promoting and valuing the overall well-being of students and staff. So solution A, the increased leadership and oversight, is more of an internal solution within the school building. I would clearly communicate the goals and expectations to the staff about the importance of relationship building in the classroom. And secondly, I would develop a system to better monitor student use of technology inside our buildings. In terms of standards, in order to be an effective leader, Dr. Forbes needs to protect teachers, students, and other staff's work environment from disruption, which is obviously, that disruption has arisen in this case. And Dr. Forbes should also lead instructional practices by promoting what's consistent with the research regarding children and learning. Secondly, solution B would be increasing awareness of school safety externally. So that involves actively engaging parents and students and other community members in meaningful discussions about the seriousness of cyberbullying, the threats that have appeared at the school, and then to develop a committee to look into increased efforts of character education. Again, we can't control all of what our students do, and we can't make those decisions at home for them, certainly when they're using the internet. However, we can set forth expectations of what it's like to be a good classmate or what it's like to be a great student. And that's not just based on performance and grades and test scores. It's, are we teaching kids to be good people? To use this unfortunate and traumatic experience as a learning moment, Dr. Forbes should work to increase the community of care and support for students and staff, which is Standard 5. These efforts should engage parents and students in meaningful conversations about the importance of personal well-being and the consequences, severe consequences for unethical behavior, which this obviously is. Final solution C, in promoting the well-being of all staff members of the school, I think good school leaders value shared leadership and the capacity of the professionals around them. Promoting what's best for students and staff is not just done by the principal. It is done by listening and reacting to those professionals you work with, and listening and caring about the students that you serve. So Dr. Forbes should develop a committee to look into increasing character education efforts. And that was kind of mentioned in my plan of action in terms of the weeks out, months out element, but I think it's an important part of the solution. These efforts should engage parents and students in meaningful conversations about the importance of personal well-being and the consequences for unethical behavior. And as Standard 3D tells us, that should be followed by developing student policies and enforcing student policies that address misconduct in a positive, fair, and unbiased manner. In debriefing, and that being said, none of these are guaranteed results. And increasing communication changes that we communicate here in the 21st century, school officials always find themselves on guard and always find their school environments facing new types of challenges every year. But I first thought about the community barriers, and working with wealthy populations, that those populations can entail its own type of challenges. And needs a T there. And sometimes the accountability in terms of ethical behavior and character is the accountability in that realm of the school, not accountability in schoolwork, but in being a good person is a main barrier. Questioning the integrity of kids can sometimes be challenging in wealthy settings. Fair response. I think Ms. Mellis Walker may be correct in assuming who crafted the message. It's imperative not to overreact. So my initial thought was, well, Dr. Forbes could very well talk to that student, but he can't accuse until proof. He can't really do anything other than just gather evidence. So that would be difficult in times of such stress and wanting to protect your staff member. Proceeding with fairness, I thought would be a very difficult part of this response. And in the end, there's no overnight result. There's some systematic issues to definitely needing addressed at the high school. And reflecting on Standard 5, Standard 5 tells us that the building administrator is an educational leader who promotes the success of all students by acting with integrity, fairness, and in an ethical manner. Since I only have 2 minutes left of this video, I will just skim through other standards that I thought were important, or components of that standard that I thought stood out in this case study. Number 1, demonstrating a sense of integrity and ethical behavior. Obviously, not assuming the guilt of a particular student until it's thoroughly investigated. Integrity also involves employing internal and external resources. Helping your staff out, using what resources are available to you to aid the resolution of this issue. And thirdly, I think it's important to be a positive professional resource to Ms. Walker, to be there for her as a leader, as a personal and professional leader. Component 2 of Standard 5 tells us that the principal and any school leader needs to treat people fairly, equitably, with dignity and respect. So that involves maintaining confidentiality throughout the resolution of the issue. It involves working to ensure accountability and that there's appropriate responses once it's figured out who did this and where it was done, and then to develop a overarching proactive approach to prevent further incidents from arising. And lastly is component 3 of Standard 5, which tells us that school leaders should demonstrate a personal and professional code of ethics. So for Dr. Forbes, that will involve maintaining a student-centered approach and assessing and responding to the situation. It will involve realizing your own professional responsibility, improving the school climate and culture, not just the overarching climate and culture. And then thirdly, to continue promoting these same values with district leaders, staff, parents, and other stakeholders. Not just having that expectation within the school building, but also really communicate the vision and goals district and community-wide. Here are my sources, and thank you for listening to what is now 14 and a half minutes.